Good afternoon and welcome to the 11th episode of Anglican Unscripted. This is the only Anglican video podcast in the internet. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger, and today is September 25th, 2011.
George, today in history. It was a famous day in the Anglican Church. It was the first Lambeth Conference in 1867. I'm going to tell you something that's going to be very shocking about the first Lambeth Conference. It was about sex, erroneous doctrine, and politics. I know. What happened? I mean, I thought it was just something from the 1990s. Lambeth 111 was, or 110 was just a recent thing, but apparently we've been dealing with a lot of these issues for a long time. 76 bishops were called by letter from the Archbishop of the time and brought to Lambeth Palace to have the first Lambeth Conference. And the first Lambeth Conference actually had its first boycott. And the Archbishop of York refused to attend, and his bishops did not attend. We also had, his name was John Colenso, Bishop Colenso from Africa, was under investigation, or he was in trouble for giving out erroneous doctrine on polygamy and other such things. And he was
actually Actually, there was a lawsuit. Imagine that. The South African Church was suing Bishop Colenso in civil court.
And he was actually good friends with the Dean of Westminster Abbey, and he convinced the Dean of Westminster Abbey not to let the first Lambeth Conference have a closing communion at the church. All these politics from 160 years ago. Well, obviously we've come a long way since then. Tell me the relevance now of the Lambeth Conference.
There is no relevance to the Lambeth Conference.
Well,
it's that simple. In, I think it was 1997, 1998, there was a report called the Virginia Report, named after Virginia Seminary, where it was finalized, where the idea was trotted out that there are four instruments of communion, four structures that hold us Anglicans together. There was the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Primates Meeting, the Anglican Consultative Council, and the Lambeth Conference. And over the centuries, since the first meeting in 1867, Lambeth conferences were places where bishops debated and talked about the issues, theological, spiritual, social of the day. In 1930, the Lambeth Conference discussed contraception. Was it moral for Christians to use birth control? And the Anglican bishops voted by majority to say yes, it was. And at that point, we had a change in church teaching and doctrine. We had similar discussions about women priests, and in 1998 we had discussions about homosexuality. And whether or not you liked what the outcome was, the issues were thrashed out. There was a discussion and theological principles were enunciated. Lambeth 2008 was a 10-day graduate session topped off with a tea party with the Queen. Rowan Williams constructed, and his team constructed, a conference that was designed to achieve nothing. And it served its purpose.
Yeah, it overachieved nothing.
I wrote an article about this soon afterwards where I called it the Seinfeld Conference. It was a conference about nothing. Just like the TV show Seinfeld was a show about nothing, Lambeth 2008 was a conference about nothing. Well, and we're living into the consequences of that right now.
Yeah, it is what we call the Indaba process, which is basically, I talk, you listen. And that structure does not exist in a discussion or any conciliatory process. I remember we even had a question with the person who gave the official Bible study of the General Convention, and he was asked what was his opinion on Lambeth 110, the resolution. He goes, "I have no opinion." I mean, just the shallowness of the theology that went on at that conference was unattainable. And really, Henry Romney summed it up, and so did so many of the archbishops who did not attend, by saying that, this structure does not work anymore.
The structure could work. Remember, we interviewed Archbishop Arambi in Alexandria, Egypt, in February of 2009 after Lambeth. And one of the things he said is that we need to have a council, an Anglican version of Vatican II, where we sit down, all sides, and thrash this out and discuss these things and what we believe and what we don't believe. Lambeth conferences in the past had done that. Now, the way it was done under Rowan Williams, it infantilized the bishops. The bishops were small children who had to be guarded and guided from scary ideas and scary thoughts, and kept away as far as possible from the press. And as so many bishops told me at Lambeth 2008, who had been to the previous one, it was an expensive vacation.
Yeah,
no more.
And that's the big problem, is the makeup now of the archbishops and the bishops. Before, in the early photos of the Lambeth conference, you saw one black African-American bishop. Or African bishop.
African bishop.
African bishop.
Samuel Crowther of Nigeria in the 1880s.
And all the rest were British nationalists or expatriates who were colonializing the communion for England and Americans. All the rest were all white guys. And you can see the progression of time as each picture was taken, more and more and more non-whites are appearing in the pictures. And they actually believe what they were taught. They said, well, you taught us the Bible is inerrant, that you taught us that Scripture is, for life and not for just polity. And they show up at these conferences and they go, you're not telling us what you told us before.
And I want to piggyback onto that. One thing I recall very strong, in 2005, we had the ACC meeting in Nottingham, England. And that was the meeting where Frank Griswold brought a team from the United States that included Susan Russell, who is from All Saints in Pasadena, and one of the leaders of Integrity. And Susan Russell gave a presentation on what Integrity understands the Bible to say about homosexuality. And I can recall talking, I think it was Peter Akinola, I may have that wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Peter Akinola, who said to me in private, for him that was one of the best parts of the meeting because he understood where they were coming from. He didn't believe it, he thought it was nonsense, he thought it was unchristian, but the point of view was being made public, not this namby-pamby massaging, can't we all get along, kumbaya nonsense.
Right.
And that engagement between both sides that Lambeth was supposed to do and had always done, it's gone.
Well, yeah, because the discussion isn't tell me what you think. You're trying to tell me what you want me to think.
And tell me how you feel.
Yeah, that's right, and then the feel thing.
Our second story today comes from China. From August 31st to September 10th, the primates of the Global South Coalition were in Shanghai and Peking and met with leaders of the Chinese State Church. And on the last day of their meeting, they released a communique that had two key central points. The first was a blistering attack on the Archbishop of Canterbury and the instruments of communion, and the second was an overture and appreciation of the Chinese three-self patriotic movement, which is the Chinese State Church. And these two statements are extraordinary. The first statement about the Archbishop of Canterbury has raised hackles among the establishment and among conservatives. I'm thinking of the blog Stand Firm people have been very harsh to criticize the Global South primates for reaching out to the Communist Chinese state church. Kevin, what do you think about this?
Well, that is interesting. It seems the Global South and Nixon have something in common. They were both able to cross over the wall and say,
neither are crooks.
Neither are crooks. Wait, no, one was, but we'll do dither in Republican politics some other time. But the reality is, you have to have some type of strategy, and their strategy now is to meet with the state church and try to influence how the state church works within the culture. Mm-hmm. Now, you and I sometimes disagree with that, and people on Stand Firm and other blogs can disagree with that strategy, but I'm going to give it a chance. Let's see if this works. It's worked so many times in the past to start from the top down than it has working from the bottom up. However, the largest Christian body in our world is the underground Chinese church, mm-hmm. and they are being persecuted by the state church. Mm-hmm. So when you're persecuting my brothers and sisters in Christ, I really have to, not roll my eyes, but please explain yourself.
We received an email from one of our viewers, Lauren Fox, who's a Episcopal priest in the Diocese of Central Florida. Lauren had been a missionary in Singapore for a number of years and knows John Chu very, very well. And one of the things Lauren wanted to make sure we got across was that Archbishop Chu, his focus over the past few decades has been to rebuild and strengthen and revive the Christian church in China. And this inside strategy is not one of going along to get along and just sucking up to the communist authorities, but rather the belief that it is easier to work within the system, and the system can change through God's prayer and through the intervention of the Holy Spirit, than it is to rebuild completely from the outside. So these aren't foolish, starry-eyed people going to China thinking, oh, all is wonderful, but rather just say, these are my brothers in Christ, and we need to reach out to them and strengthen them so that they can go forward.
Yeah, and it is a strategy that has worked in the past. It is also a strategy that has failed in the past. So we're going to have to let history be the determinant, but our job as reporters is to report the facts as we see them, and as opinion makers, we're also allowed to give our opinions. So,
one of the things I think is really fascinating about this is that the Global South primates, I believe there were 9 of them on the trip, all the Global South except Tanzania and Sudan, who couldn't make it, and South Africa, who doesn't go to these things. They in essence, have started their own ecumenical movement independent of the Anglican Consultative Council. The ACC and London is irrelevant to the workings of the Global South at this stage. And this is one of the outworkings of that. We're seeing them pursue a strategy of outreach to other churches outside of Lambeth. At 2008 at Lambeth, do you remember Cardinal Casper, the Roman Catholic head of the Congregation for Inter-Christian, I forget its name, the Catholic agency that works to bring Christians together? He gave a speech, and one of the things he said is, we Roman Catholics don't know who we should be talking to, London or Africa. And we're seeing that come to fruition here in this trip to China. It's really significant.
Yeah, that is interesting because they know that the four instruments of communion, the Global South knows that the four instruments of communion no longer work. And that trying to work within that polity is useless. Mm-hmm. Rowan's unresponsive. Lambeth has been gutted. The ACC is absolutely corrupt. The standing committee of the ACC is even worse. Mm-hmm. And all these structures are null and void. So what do? Do you give up and walk away? Or do you start your own? And that's the amazing thing of the Global South leadership, is they're saying, we can't do it the way we used to do it. That doesn't work anymore. We're going to do it anew. And we're reaching out and studying our own functions. The most interesting thing is it was not Roland Williams in China sitting and talking to the Chinese church. The most interesting thing is it was the largest portion of the Anglican church. Those archbishops were sitting there meeting with Chinese officials saying, we want to work with you. We want to make your church a better church, and please let us in your doors. And you know what China said? Come and join us.
I just want to point out a failing in the Archbishop's overseas policy that I perceive. We've had these international meetings, and the Archbishop of Canterbury does have a representative to the Chinese Church. Is it a Chinese bishop like John Chu? No, it's it's the Bishop of Birmingham, England. Send an Englishman to talk to the Chinese about Chinese Christianity. Earlier this year, there was a meeting of the Arab Christian world hosted by the Vatican, and the Anglican Communion sent a representative. Now, did it send Bishop Munir Anis of Egypt, who might be the leading Arab Episcopalian Anglican? No, they sent the Bishop of Bath and Wells to represent Anglicans at these things. It just shows the, I don't want to say, it shows the conceit of the central administration in London to think that Englishmen have to, by virtue of being Englishmen, represent Anglicans to other bodies.
Yeah, it's a folly, and it just shows that they are not learning that once you colonialize, you let the native people, begin to be indigenous to that gospel and to how the church works, and somehow there's this grandfather oversight that London and Lambeth Palace want in 815 here in America want to continue to do, to look over and make sure that we're doing it right.
One of the things that I've found particularly interesting is that it's not, I've come to believe it's not so much bad decision making from Lambeth Palace as the absence of decision making from Lambeth Palace, allowing the Anglican Consultative Council staff to make decisions. I can't express to you and to our viewers, all three of you, hi Mom, my mom, your mom, and my wife, the disdain, the real disdain the ACC is held in by leaders of the Global South. They feel that it is a corrupt body. That's not my word. That's the words that have been shared with us and with you.
Well, it has become so much of a problem that in China they came out and said that the theology of the Archbishop is null and void. That we're not getting anything in any, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but basically the See of Canterbury is absent. There's nobody in the See of Canterbury. Now
the moral authority, I think, was the phrase they used.
Yeah, the moral authority and theology are gone, and which is very true. If there's a problem in the world, you can't go to Roland Williams to help him solve the problem, which is exactly what the Lambeth Conference was designed to do, is to have a structure where we can all gather together. That's gone now, and so the Global South has taken it upon themselves to start up a new structure and to influence the communion going forward. And it's going to be kind of interesting to watch what kind of meetings they have, whether it be these new GAFCON things that are forming, or the Fellowship of Confessing the Anglicans, or this new AMIE, boy, I'm going to murder that for the next 10 years, that formed in England. They're starting to set up little steps and structures and building blocks around the communion where they're going to have a power base in the future, where not being called to a Lambeth conference is not going to be a big deal.
Now, I think we should make it absolutely perfectly clear. We had a Nixon reference earlier.
Yes, we did. Okay.
We need to make it perfectly clear
yes,
that the Global South is not quitting the Anglican Communion.
No.
They're in it for the long haul. They're not walking out. They're not forming their own church. They're not forming something new. They rather have said, look, the church, the head of the church is Jesus Christ. It should not be someone appointed by Tony Blair, the Prime Minister of England.
Absolutely. And that's going to be the neat thing, is you and I have watched this over the last dozen years, where everything was up to Canterbury. When we had trouble here in America, the first place they wrote letters to was, Roland, help us out. We need you to come here to America, save the Connecticut Six, save the churches in Virginia, save all these people who are being deposed by their bishop. We've had well over 200 people deposed by presiding Bishop Catherine Jefferts Schori. And not one word from Roland Williams.
Do you two things? I think you did a film in. I think you asked him that question specifically. Did you not, in Alexandria? What do you think about? What do you think about?
We got to sit at the table with His Grace, and we went around the table, and you asked a question, and David Virtue asked a question, and he got to me and said, "Oh boy, I'm going to ask the question." I said, "Archbishop Roland Williams, this year J.I. Packard was deposed by his bishop, and Bishop Duncan was deposed by presiding Bishop Catherine Jefferts Schori. What do you think about that?"
I don't think I want to, in this press conference, speak as personally, because I'm speaking here as the convener of the Primates meeting.
Yeah, and that is, a vast reality of what's going on here. Is there's consequences for your actions. Their ACNA does not exist because of the actions of presiding Bishop Catherine Schori. The ACNA here in America exists because the Archbishop of Canterbury did not do anything.
That's the truest word we've said today. I agree with you 100%.
Oh, wow. Whoa, wait. Hear the shaking. Tell my wife, I was right.
No, you are that really is it. You've got it in one.
Okay, so we go forward. We pray that God will provide us a new leader, but we also need to pray that the Global South really has an effect on the future structures here of the Anglican Communion. Mm-hmm. That 10 years from now, we're not relying on the Archbishop of Canterbury, Lambeth, the ACC, and all else as our structures. That we need to put in place some type of conciliatory meeting that we have once a decade, something of that effect. I don't know what it will be, but it can't be what we have.
True.
Okay, sitting next to me, well, not really, there's an ocean between us, but the guy there on the other side is my good friend Peter Old from England, and we're going to discuss our overseas news, and let's just call you my London correspondent.
Canterbury correspondent, really, actually.
Oh, Canterbury, that's right, yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah.
I like that, a bigger territory, so to speak. But does that include all the colonies? All right, so the news now that we just read about is the very Reverend Thomas Gordon. He's the Dean of Leyland, or it's an Irish name.
It's an Irish name, so you can just basically, as long as you sound convincing saying it, that's okay.
Oh, Leyland, got it. When that's in Ireland, announced that he was in a civil partnership since July 29th. Mm-hmm. And he didn't let his bishop know, didn't let his archbishop know, and here's the news. What's the feedback, and what's going to happen?
Yeah, the controversy around Thomas Gordon began about a year ago or so, when he was first appointed as dean for the cathedral in Leyland or Loughlin, or however it's called. I don't know. And basically, he was appointed as an openly gay man, which is not in and of itself a problem. I know several openly gay clergy in the Church of England who are also affirmedly celibate, and that's perfectly fine. Problem is, on the 29th of July, as you said, he entered into a civil partnership, and it turns out that when he had a chat to his bishop about it, the bishop down in Loughlin isn't exactly the most conservative. The bishop really didn't ask for any assurances that his sexual life was celibate, nothing like that. And when this emerged over the last few weeks, there has been an absolute storm in the Church of Ireland. What you have to understand about the Church of Ireland is that it covers the whole of the island of Ireland. So the island of Ireland is split into two parts. There's the Republic of Ireland in the south, and then there's the province of Northern Ireland in the north, which is part of the United Kingdom. But the Church of Ireland, just like the rugby team that are currently playing in the World Cup, That's rugby's like American football, but for hard people. The Church of Ireland covers the whole of the island of Ireland,
Right.
and the north is pretty conservative, and the south really isn't. So you've got this kind of north-south conservative liberal split, and most of the opposition has been coming from the north, and they've basically said, look, this is just not acceptable. It's not acceptable that we have a cathedral dean who is in a relationship that is to all intents and purposes sexual outside of marriage, and the bishop is doing nothing about it, isn't getting any assurances like they get here in the Church of England that those clergy entering into civil partnerships are celibate. And it's got to a point now where a whole horde of people have basically said this is not on. They're talking about splitting, and we've got to the point where the Archbishop Alan of Armagh has basically had to do a kind of press release, a kind of open letter, basically saying, yep, the House of Bishops are going to discuss it, and we will talk to you then. But you know what? It's not going to go away. That they're not going to let it go to the House of Bishops and be put off to a committee and blah blah blah. There are a lot of people who are very unhappy and see this as a possible reason to split the Church of Ireland.
Now, is this the first spark, or has it been a festering over time?
Well, I think there's been. I mean, I'm not the world's greatest expert on the internal politics of the Church of Ireland. Though I do like a pint of Guinness.
Yes, but as far as Anglican TV is concerned, you are the person we want to talk to about this. So you got to come off as the expert. But
okay, I'll try and fool you.
So yes, so you, as you said, it's been festering a long time now.
Yeah. I mean, there's been this kind of undercurrent of where is the Church of Ireland going, and is there a sense that the leadership are taking it off into a particular direction that possibly a majority of the church on the ground doesn't actually want? That might ring some bells with you over there in the USA. Sure. I don't know. And this is like the sparking point. This is the thing that has basically made a lot of the conservatives, who are the majority in the north, say, you know what, this is our line in the sand, and we can't have a fudge over this. My understanding is that there are of the bishops in the north, most of them are pretty conservative. Most of them would take a hard line, but they're also caught in this kind of collegiality thing. And there seems to be, I'm understanding, a little bit of upset that the bishop down in Lochlan, who basically let this civil partnership happen and didn't ask the dean whether his relationship was sexual, seems to be a bit of upset amongst the board, amongst the House of Bishops, that bishop let this thing actually happen.
All right. Well, thank you for your report, and we'll look for some new, interesting news next week. I did see that the famous Ruth Gledhill followed up and also confirmed that she thought the Archbishop of Canterbury was going to resign next year, according to her sources. And she mentioned something called the Torch of England.
The Torch of England, which
Yes.
are obviously I've a lot to do. Yeah, she talked about she was on a radio program in the north of Ireland, as it happens, called Sunday Sequence, and she basically talked about this story, and she said, yeah, this is pretty much how it is. And then she talked about all the polls that are on websites and all that kind of stuff. Well, as far as I knew, there was only one poll on who the next Archbishop of Canterbury should be. That was held on our Church of England website, churchofengland.org.uk, if you're interested. Yeah. And I tweeted her and said, hang on a minute, were there polls in other places? And she was saying, well, I was referring to all the other websites that were linking to you. So I said, oh, so that would be a plural of majesty, would it then?
That's right. All right,
so
Peter.
The Church of England at the forefront of the debate.
Again. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time, and we'll catch you next week.
It's been a pleasure.
George, on to our next news story. We may as well, we've covered the communion quite well, so let's do some domestic news. There's been some interesting news. St. John's Shaughnessy, which is up in Vancouver, Canada, had to move out. As you and I and most of our viewers are aware, they lost their court case in Supreme Court. The Supreme Court would not hear it. They've kind of had trouble with their bishop, as in most Orthodox churches have, and they got kicked out of the building, and they're meeting in a new place. In related news, in New Mexico, Christ the King Church received an invoice, so to speak, from the Diocese of Rio Grande. And why don't you let our viewers know, or viewers, yeah, we got viewers, let our viewers know what happened down in New Mexico.
Well, Mom, as our viewer is called,
Yeah.
St. Mark's in the Mesa was, I believe it was the largest or second largest congregation in the Diocese of the Rio Grande. St. Mark's in the Mesa in Albuquerque in 2009 split. Its rector, and along with 80% of the congregation, withdrew from the Episcopal Church to form an Anglican ACNA congregation. They left the building, they left all the property, all the prayer books, they left the people in the columbariums, and they moved out. They did not fight. They started fresh. Well, on August 31st, the Standing Committee of the Diocese of the Rio Grande wrote to them and said, your St. Mark's in the Mesa's 2009 pledge was $25,000, and it wasn't paid, and we think that because you were such great people, you should pay $20,000 of that pledge. We'll give you a break.
Wait, they got a
$5,000.
It was coupon day, huh?
Yeah. Now, I saw this story from the American Anglican Council. They posted a letter, and I just thought it was hysterically funny. And I'll say a polite word, the chutzpah of the Diocese of the Rio Grande to bill an ACNA church after it had left its buildings, left everything behind it, didn't resort to litigation, to bill them for unmet pledges of an Episcopal church, I thought was just rather rich.
It is rich, and it's kind of one of those good news stories, because here is a church that did everything right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they said, we're not going to fight, we're going to leave our building, pews, everything, even the little note paper with the church name on it, our business cards, take it all. We're going to walk out, move down the block, start our own church afresh, brand new name, everything, change our identity, and join the American church in North America. That's the perfect scenario for the Episcopal Church.
Mm-hmm.
For a church that's leaving, is no litigation. And, well, wait a minute, these guys are so nice, maybe we get some more money out of them. So I guess it was the Standing Committee, or one of the committees of the diocese met together to make it official. It wasn't one person deciding this, and decided, well, let's see if we can't collect some of their old money as well, what they promised to give the diocese. And it's you read these stories and say, there's no way, but guess what? In the Episcopal Church, there is a way.
The whole litigation thing is just a black mark against the Episcopal Church, and it doesn't have to be this way. George Council, who's the Bishop of New Jersey, and you could fairly place him on the liberal side of the spectrum, center-left, he allowed a congregation to leave the Diocese of New Jersey, take its property, and made a settlement with them. Now, and on the right, Bishop John Howe of Central Florida has done similar things and either allowing congregations to depart with their property or without their property, but in each case doing things in a loving, Christian, fair manner. They disagreed, didn't want them to go in both cases, but worked out something that was amicable to both sides.
Yeah, and the Acton Diocese, the Anglican Church of North America, has the same policy. If you want to remain in the Episcopal Church, San Joaquin did this, Diocese Fort Worth, other dioceses that have gone with Acton, had said if you feel you need to remain in the Episcopal Church, the property is yours and you remain Episcopalian.
And I think the Diocese of Dallas and Christchurch Plano, I think, is an exemplar of this. Christchurch Plano, the largest church in terms of attendance in the Episcopal Church in the USA, withdrew from the Diocese of Dallas. It was a terrible blow to the Diocese of Dallas financially and numbers-wise, but Bishop Jim Stanton worked through this in a Christ-like manner, and the Christ Church Plano and Dave Roseberry joined the AMIA. Christ Church Plano then withdrew from the AMIA, basically over the women's ordination issue, and joined the ACNA. And the AMIA allowed them to do that move. And that's a big financial hit for the AMIA to lose a church of that size. But they took the better path.
Yeah, and there obviously still are troubles in the Anglican Church of North America, but they're dealt with in a Christ-like way. Mm-hmm. And that's really going to be a great witness going forward. No church run by man is perfect. Mm-hmm. Only a church run by Christ. And those who leave themselves open to that understanding that Christ is the head of the church will find themselves much further down the road than those who think they're the head of the church. Okay, we just talked to Peter Old on the other side of the ocean. Now I have Alan Haley on the other side of the country. Welcome again. You're our favorite legal correspondent, and I've been getting a lot of great feedback from your contributions. And boy, there's not a week that goes by that we don't have some great new legal information from Tech. Now, apparently, they just had a meeting down in Ecuador, and the new CEO, Bishop Stacy Sauls, delivered a new structure for the church, or a new idea of how to restructure the church. Apparently, they're spending more money than they're taking in, and I'm sure the lawsuits don't have any effect on that, but no. But why don't you give me the lowdown of what you read so far and what you know?
Okay, well, it was at a meeting of the House of Bishops, as you said, in Quito, where they had come down there to meet because that diocese was dysfunctional and the presiding bishop needed to do something about it, so she had everyone resign.
Oh.
And she put in new people of her own picking to continue forward there. So we're repeating the pattern we've seen in, Quincy and San Joaquin and Pittsburgh, Fort Worth. Next, Bishop Sauls chose that opportunity to tell his bishops about a new resolution he wanted them to support for their diocese to introduce into the next General Convention. And this resolution proposes the creation of a special commission on structure of the church for mission. And it's supposed to come up with ways to reduce the top-heavy structure of the church, the 75 different commissions, committees, agencies, and boards that it now has, and streamline it and get it down to a manageable option that will be proposed to a special convention of the Episcopal Church to meet sometime between 2012 and 2015.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you here, but don't we already have a structure in the canons?
We have a standing commission on structure of the church. It's established by canon. It's one of the permanent standing commissions of the church, and it has the canon that establishes it has a very little interesting clause in there. It says whenever a proposal is made for the creation of a new committee, board, or agency, it shall, wherever feasible, be referred to the Standing Commission on Structure of the Church for its consideration and advice. Now, this is not being done.
No.
As usual, the canons are being ignored. We're completely bypassing the procedure to sit out, and the interesting thing is this resolution spells out that all the members of this new commission will be handpicked. First of all, the presiding bishop and the president of the House of Deputies get to decide how it's going to be composed. That is, how many clergy, how many laity, and how many members. And then they get to handpick them as to who's going to serve on it. And of course, they will be guiding the production of whatever report that it comes out with. So this is a very tightly controlled process. It's designed to ensure that there are no surprises when the special convention comes around. And you can read between the lines easily as anyone.
Well, I see that they want to go from one convention every 3 years to once every 4 years to save money.
Or even 5 years, yeah.
Or even 5 years. That they finally discovered that what they're doing isn't working.
General Convention has become an irrelevant spectacle that takes place at millions of dollars of cost to the church every 3 years. So having it every 4 years or every 5 years would not be that bad, because it's just a gathering of people, as one knowledgeable sociologist observed once. It's a gathering of people with excess leisure time or people with a cause.
Which is kind of ironic that they showed up at Disney last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, right. And so, as I say, it's a gathering of people that come together. They pass their feel-good resolutions, and then they all disperse, never to come together again. There's no follow-up. There's no accountability. No attempt to try to, and the executive council has to keep adjusting the budget in between the years when General Convention isn't meeting. Mm. And so we spend so many millions of dollars on General Convention for such an extravaganza that doesn't produce anything of any lasting merit, that it's about time we just, made it a 4-year or a 5-year. It could even be a 10-year event.
I think a 10-year would be fine, because it is $8 to $10 million they're laying out to bring everybody in, and then the dioceses have to pay to bring everybody in, and it's
and it's for 10 days, which they're proposing now to shorten down to 8 days. They say so they're minimizing it already, yeah. And that's really taking General Convention back to its original role. When in 1789. General Convention was this gathering of every 3 years of the bishops and clergy and lay deputies of the church. They came together, heard reports on the various dioceses, and changed a few canons, and then went home. And so you've got this structure that was established back in 1789, and it can't support the weight of the huge bureaucracy and structure that's up on top of it now. It wasn't ever designed to be such a national, permanent, continuing bureaucracy.
Nor was the presiding bishop meant to be a pope. So
no, presiding bishop back then was a diocesan, just like any other diocesan, had their diocese to run. So the coming together every 3 years to preside over a meeting of the bishops was not all that burdensome.
Sadly, Alan, I think you and I will be meeting weekly for a long time discussing tech legalities. I want to thank you for your time and another great report.
Okay.
You haven't been deposed, and nobody's sent any lawsuit letters to me, so we're doing pretty good so far. Now, it's important that we do get feedback from you. You guys do send us letters every week, but to really help the show stay focused on what the audience is looking for, and not just what Kevin and George think, we really want your input. And George, can you give them the email address?
AnglicanUnscripted @gmail.com.
All right, and as you can see, it's right under our chins right now. You can also go to Facebook. If you go to facebook.com/Anglican.tv, you can watch all these videos and all the videos that I post throughout the week. Like, we have video from the Mid-Atlantic Diocese Investiture, and we also have video from Archbishop Duncan in his 9/11 address, and I had a special exclusive 9/11 interview with him. We want to thank our sponsor this week, which is Anglican's Perspective by the American Anglican Council, and the SALT Ministry, which is a conference coming up in the Diocese of Western Anglicans in a couple weeks. And so please go to this website and look for more information. Thank you, George, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Goodbye.